how can I, as an appointed official, or how can my elected officials find ways to be more efficient? Is there a better way? There's not a Republican or a Democratic way to fill a pothole, but is there a better way to fill a pothole? Should they start at the north end of a city and work their way to the south end if it makes more sense that we're going to get it done?
Pull up a chair, bring the vision you're chasing. Look over the blueprints, years in the making. From planning to progress and growth that will last. Come on, let's build and enable at the inside table. At the inside table.
Hey, my name's Tim. Thank you for clicking on this today and listening to us. We've just been happy to have conversations around real estate development and construction has been my passion for years. So here at Veritas, we're also passionate about that. And so what you're going to hear is just some general conversations that we've had about certain topics within this framework over the last several months. We hope you enjoy these. We hope you came to learn today. If you need some more information, we'll get you some information at the end of this as we close this thing out. But enjoy this conversation. Can you just tell everybody your name and what your background is, which I think will lend some credibility to this conversation?
Sure. My name's Pete Olson. I am a former city town manager, spent almost 25 years in municipal management through two different states, both Nebraska and Indiana. Got a master's in public administration. Somewhere in my younger life, I was a volunteer firefighter, lifeguard, and son of a teacher, and a volunteer EMT, and just kind of had that public service built into me. And so as I was growing up, it was just kind of taught that public service was something you do, and I enjoyed it. And so just kept doing it and still believe in it, and continue to push as a way of life that is something that I want people to see as a positive thing. And as we as a profession push forward, I want people to know that even in today's age, wherein it isn't always viewed as a positive thing, that there are good people out there doing it, especially at the local level, where I think it is extremely good, and that is where the best things happen.
Yeah, I think you and I know that. We know a lot of really good people around the state of Indiana specifically, but others as well, as we've dipped our toe into Michigan here over the last couple of years. And I'm always amazed at behind the scenes in every community, there is somebody or a group of people that are making things work,
right,
that I think people often take for granted as part of that. There's a lot of things we could talk about today, but I think what I want to focus on today specifically, because there's a lot of facets to your job, right? So I think even before we jump into this topic of government efficiency, it would be great to tell people what you're doing now.
Sure.
Because you did that for 24, almost 25 years, and now you're not, right? So tell us what you're doing today.
So I am now the Director of Community Development for Civitas Strategies, which is a Veritas Group company. After spending 16 years in Yorktown, Indiana, working with the Veritas Group in the last 5 to 7 years through downtown redevelopment, knowing that I wanted to stay in central Indiana, I found a way that I could stay involved with municipal management, but make an impact on the private side. And so coming here, thankfully to you and the rest of the staff here, I'm still able to have an impact with municipal managers, but doing it a different way by helping other municipal managers, other local elected officials make an impact in their communities, either by helping them plan or implement their plans to make a difference in their communities.
So that's awesome. And I think it's fair to say that in Yorktown, your efforts were monumental in getting a lot of things done. But it was for one community. And
right.
Now in the seat that you get to sit in, maybe you're taking that same skill set and that same passion for public service that you talked about a second ago into a deeper market where you are now affecting multiple communities with your skill set that you've been gifted.
I hope so.
Well, we hope so too.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so today I mentioned it a second ago, we want to talk about government efficiency and what does that term mean in general? And then I think there's some things we can get into. There may be more hot topics of today. Certainly there's been some changes in our state legislature here in Indiana that are going to maybe bring this conversation to the forefront a little bit more, for us to be able to hopefully come alongside of our existing clients and new clients and help them think through and strategize on how to do certain things. But you have a unique background in part of this that we'll get into a little bit later. But let's start with just the idea of government efficiency in general. And what does that, I mean, we all laugh at many people will think that's an oxymoron,
Sure.
right? That you can't have an efficient government, because it's not known for efficiency. So help us understand what government efficiency is.
Sure. So I want to step back, right? Like, as a public manager, one of the things that when I was getting my master's, it was kind of beat into us as municipal managers or public administrators that the reason public administration or municipal managers were supposed to be the best form of government was these were supposed to be the people that made efficient and effective decisions. And so we always joke that government, whether it's at the federal level or even the local level, you can't be efficient and effective, right? But if we are making good decisions, government can be efficient and effective. Now, there are safeguards in government so that we aren't doing things to be detrimental to the public. There are majority rules, but minority has rights. We're not going to trample on just the public realm. So we're not going to take away public property and utilize it for we're not going to take parkland and just make it a business opportunity without going through the proper steps. Those things are built into the state code. So if we're going to if we have a piece of public property, there's a step to sell that piece of public property. So, but there's an efficient way to do that, and public managers often know what those public steps are, and there's an efficient way to do that. So we know that, all right, you're going to have to get to appraisals. We're going to have to do those. You're going to hire the appropriate appraisers. We're going to have to take those in front of the council, or we're going to have to take those in front of the plan commission, and those have to be advertised. And so how can you be efficient and take those through those steps? And so efficiencies mean, how can we take and limit and do that effectively as quickly as possible so that we're not wasting time? Because as you and I often talk, the developers also understand that to capitalize on a market so that a community can grow as quickly as possible. And there is a reason for a community to grow quickly. That helps assessed value. That helps bring additional jobs. That helps give new grocery stores or new business opportunities or new schools, new students into schools, all of which help tax bases and everything else. That's an efficient thing to happen. So there are positives on both sides. So how can we join those two things together? And so that public form of management is a good thing to have happen. And so, being effective and efficient is a good thing. And that was something that was always taught when I was getting my master's degree. That was part of why you wanted to do it. And that led into why I wanted to be a public manager. And that's, so now we chuckle about it. Well, why do we want to be effective and efficient? Well, the other part of this is, how bureaucratic do we want things? We've got how many levels of government? We've got townships, we've got counties, we've got towns, we've got cities, we've got 3 different classes of cities in the state of Indiana. And, how many different, there's 592, not counties, 592 cities and towns, and you've got 92 counties and however many townships. I mean, how many elected officials or appointed officials can you have? and some of them are growing, some of them are shrinking, and this just doesn't seem efficient. And so, back in '08, the Shepard-Kernan report that came out really said we should start thinking about being more efficient. That we shouldn't necessarily have so many elected and appointed officials. Are there ways that we can be better at local government? And I would challenge that we should be better at local government. Our elected or our citizens deserve to be better. You know, I, as a taxpayer, don't want to be paying more taxes to different entities just because they're elected officials out there doing it. How can I, as an appointed official, or how can my elected officials find ways to be more efficient? Is there a better way? There's not a Republican or a Democratic way to fill a pothole, but is there a better way to fill a pothole? Should they start at the north end of a city and work their way to the south end if it makes more sense that we're going to get it done in one failed swoop? Or does it make sense that we're going to pave a road that's going to get paved, one continuous road, instead of we're going to pave half of this one and then we're going to go clear to the other end of the city and do another one. So where do the efficiencies make sense?
So I'm glad you brought that point up, because I don't think this is a political discussion,
no, it's not.
Right? It's not about whether you're an R or a D behind your name. This is simply fiscal common sense at times. And I think, there are critics of local government, right?
Sure.
That come after people like yourself when you were in that seat, and versus other town managers and mayors and elected officials. Yeah. But what I've figured out over the years is that the only politics that really truly affect my life in any probably real meaningful way are the ones that are at the local level, right? And how does that stuff get done? And I know there are critics, and we'll talk a little bit later about quality of life spending and why that is important to some, and why some people don't like it at all, and how that's a perception by others that maybe you have too much money as part of that. But I know with the changes going on, right, there's always been a difference between a public entity and a private entity, right? So if a private entity does not do the things you're talking about, we won't exist for very long. Right. Because our whole thing is about our expenses need to be less than our income and our revenue, so that we have a delta. There is a profit line there, because if we're the opposite way, we can't keep the people that we have. We can't hire the people that we do. We can't provide the services that we do. And so we, as private entities, have to behave efficiently as much as we can in order to maximize the potential and keep people employed. Government has always, at least in public perception, has always operated a little bit differently, right? Because there's this kind of guaranteed income that's coming through, whether it's through taxes or fees or whatever other ways are funded. And so there's always this bucket of money, and really the perception is it's elected officials' job just to spend it wisely. Right. Well, I think we've all kind of known over the years that we look at things that are being spent. We're like, how does that make sense? Why are we spending money on that? And then we hear stories about, golden toilets and, how we're spending so much more money in the government side than we are in the private side. And why is it happening? Now, I think you and I could have a different conversation some other day. I think that's changing in the market, especially in local government. That's probably not the case. I'm sure it is at some level in the federal government. But, thinking through how we do what we do, I think, what are some kind of first steps a local community could take to start beginning to think about how do we make what we're doing every day more efficient and therefore save tax dollars? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the first thing that I'm always thinking about is are we utilizing the people that we have correctly? I mean, if you really think about the biggest expense that we have in any local government, it is people. Right. I mean, we're paying salaries. 2, we're insuring them. 3, we're going to make sure that we're going to have some overtime. We're going to have to put them in vehicles. We're going to do all that. So are we utilizing them in the proper way? Are we getting them trained? Do we really need them? So, oftentimes, so if we're starting to regress as a community, do we still need as many employees as we've got? Now, hopefully, as a community, we're not regressing. So that's unfortunately one of the questions that we should be asking is if we were a community of 100,000 and now we're down to a community of 50,000. Do we still need the same number of employees? So that's obviously one question. So right sizing the number of employees. And two, do we have them in the right departments, right? If we used to have, if we used to have a different process of sanitary sewer treatment, or we used to have a different water treatment, or we're now doing road maintenance different. Can we utilize those employees in different places? So should we be moving road employees into a park, or should we be moving water employees to the road? I mean, just so are we doing evaluations to making sure that our employees are being utilized in the right way? Do we have the right number of employees in the right places? Is the first place. Public safety employees are another one, right? Are we shifting them right? So data wise, fire departments, used to be, we did not have the building codes that we did back in previous eras, and now our building have gotten so much better. So we used to see a much higher rate of fires in buildings, but now we've got a whole lot more car accidents because we're a mobile
More cars. Yeah.
we're a mobile society. So are we utilizing the data to make sure that we're able to truly do the runs that we have, and are we putting our fire stations, when we're building new fire stations, in the place where they're going to be able to respond quickly and do those things?
On August 13th, the Veritas Group is hosting the Insight Summit 2026 at the Alexander Hotel in downtown Indianapolis. This is a one-day in-person gathering designed for mayors, city and county officials, planners, engineers, economic development leaders, and community advocates who are actively shaping Indiana's future. The day is built around real-world insight from Veritas Group-led projects across the state, focusing on what's actually working in infrastructure, public space development, and economic growth. Whether you're driving capital projects, navigating growth challenges, or building strategic partnerships, attendees will leave with actionable insights, expanded networks, and a clearer vision for delivering lasting community impact. Learn more and register at theveritasgroup.com/insight.
Talk to me a little bit about this idea of consolidation.
Sure.
You mentioned before that the multiple layers of government having, as we all sit under 3 or 4, right? So from county to township, or sorry, local, city, town, to township, to county, to state, to federal, right? Where we're just kind of building up that ramp. What opportunities exist, at least in this area, for thinking through how do we make government more efficient by consolidating certain services and or uses so we don't have this layered tax approach? Yeah.
So in Indiana, and you heard me mention it before, in Indiana, there was a report done in the middle of the early 2000s called the Shepard-Kernan report. And then there was some legislation that came out of this that was called the Government Modernization Act. And I can't give you the specific statute of it now, but it allows for government consolidation. And basically what that allows is 2 political units. That could be 2 townships, 2 counties, although I've never seen that. It could be a town and a township, a city and a township, to consolidate. And there have been a few that did it. In fact, Yorktown and Mount Pleasant Township, where I was town manager, actually was one of 2 or 3 that actually went through that process and did that. And number of reasons to think about doing that are, in our case, we looked at, one, government efficiency as being one of those. So it removed a layer of government bureaucracy. 2, it helped with fire department. We had we did not have a fire district, but we had a quasi fire district. We also saw a way to kind of look at annexation in a different way. So those three things kind of made sense. From a school district, our school district was already, our township and our town kind of already identified. And so it just made sense that we solidified that town, that township. We're all one school district, and it really just made sense. But it brought everything together into one township. It removed one layer of government. We expanded the town board from 5 members to 7 members. Did not have to do that, but that was part of the ordinance, voted on law that created the township and allowed an expanded board to be created, and now the council is the governing council of the entire township, but it's still a town and operates as a town.
So I have a couple of questions out of that I think can help anybody who's listening to this in the future. Let's start at the beginning. So if somebody says, "Hey, I would like to explore that," and I'm not looking for the statute, right? Not necessarily how to do it, but like, what are the practical steps on how do we begin those conversations about that efficiency?
Yeah. So ultimately, there are a couple actions that need to happen. Both boards have to basically sign. They both have to agree that they want to study it. There's a resolution that both boards have to create, and then they go through a study process through a year, and they create a plan that basically says this is how the government's going to work. And the government can work however they want it. It can be a town and have a mayor. It can be a city and have a city manager. It could literally be a first class city and be the size of, it could be 1,500 people, right? So there's no, the statute is very broad in what it allows. And I believe, you'll even see the legislature this coming year, 2026, even look to probably expand, some of the powers they allow, just knowing that consolidation is something I think they continue to see as a positive opportunity, but they want to encourage people to really think outside the box and think that efficiency is a good thing. So once you study it, you'll create this plan, and you'll then go to the public and you'll have to vote. And as long as the majority of both political bodies vote for it, it then becomes law the next fiscal year for those two bodies. You take off and you run.
So you mentioned that when you were the town manager at Yorktown, that your community went through this with the township.
Mm-hmm.
Does the township still exist, or is it? No, it does not exist.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Yorktown is its own incorporated area, but it includes the whole compass area, or the whole boundary, I should say, of the former township.
Yeah. So there was a portion of Mount Pleasant Township that had been previously annexed by the city of Muncie that actually is out.
Okay.
Other than that, the rest of it is the town of Yorktown.
Okay. So we talked about the beginning. How about the middle? What were some of the challenges you guys experienced as part of that process?
So obviously putting a fiscal plan together. In the case of the town and the township, you have a fairly substantial rural area. In that particular case, the study committee really wanted to commit to making sure that they looked at a fiscal plan that was not damaging to the rural area. So they put a rural and urban area taxing district together. And so they maintained that over the years, which is, I think, worked out well. But that gives them a way that once growth continues to go into the rural area, they don't have to go into a formal annexation process.
Okay.
So it makes it actually easier to move it into, instead of now having to ask to be annexed in, or you don't have to worry about moving the water sewer lines.
Yeah.
There's always been consternation about how annexation works. Now it just makes sense. We're already in there. How do we move? And now we're able to plan. It allows you to open up a better planning tool, because now, instead of really you should still do a very good comprehensive plan. Everybody should have a good comprehensive plan, but instead of saying, I'm not going to run water mains or sewer mains somewhere unless there's an annexation plan. Now it really allows you to focus. This is where growth should go. This is how we should do growth, and this is how we should focus on growth. And this also allows us to protect. And in the state of agricultural land, this is how we should protect agricultural land. And that is something that in rural Indiana that is extremely important. We hear it from the Farm Bureau, but we hear it from farmers. Protecting rural ground in the state of Indiana is important. It is something that makes Indiana, Indiana. I think protecting rural Indiana is important. There is a reason that not everybody moves to Florida or Arizona. Not everybody wants to live there. There's a reason that people want to live here, whether it's deer hunting or seeing snow or the leaves change. People want to live here. Well, some people want to live here because there's agricultural ground and they want to make a living off of farming. So we need to make sure that we continue to protect that, and we have the ability to make sure that they can do that in the long run. And you can still do that by having a consolidated city where you have a good plan in a consolidated community.
So staying in the middle of this process for a second, and obviously the reason that townships existed versus towns is they have different duties.
Sure.
Most oftentimes. So when there's a consolidation of specifically those two, because that's what you've experienced, or maybe it's another organization or something, does anything go away, or do those all get absorbed, or what does that allow?
Yeah, so they get absorbed, right? So, I mean, really think historically about what town and townships did, right? If you think about how towns, townships, and counties all existed in historical, it was all about how far you could ride on a horse. A county was a day's ride to the county seat. A township was a half day's ride, and the town was, an hour's ride into. Well, in a township, you have some poor relief, and you maybe have some fire. Every once in a while, you'll have some park. But even that's going away in most townships here in the state of Indiana. You're seeing parks really being absorbed into the urban areas. Most communities are dealing with that. So it's probably fire protection, and it's probably poor relief in the consolidated town of Yorktown. Poor relief is now handled by the town of Yorktown. Fire is handled by the town of Yorktown, and it is still the joint district that it was, but now you only have the one funding source, which is. And that was part of the reason the township was funding part, the town was funding part. We were putting it in there. If the whole budget wasn't getting spent in a single year, it was sitting in the township's budget. It was making it difficult to understand where that money was going to go at the end of the year. There wasn't a check getting written back to the town. So it was a transfer of funds from the town that was going to the township that was never getting returned. And so I mean, that was part of the discussion of why consolidation made sense. And so now it just made sense to be more efficient. Sorry.
So what, let's go to the end of the process. So it's done. Mount Pleasant Township and Yorktown are now merged, consolidated. What did you guys see as maybe you've already mentioned a couple of them, but the instant benefits of that?
I mean, so obviously we lost 2 elected positions. And
who is that? The township trustee?
So you lost the township trustee, and you lost one of the township board members.
Okay.
So there, you think about it, there were 9 total elected positions prior. Now there's only 7. So you lost 2 of those overall. And I've had council members that would have, I think, that would have told me they think 5 was still enough. That's a preference. I have not asked all of them when it's said and done. That's a political discussion amongst those folks. I think a lot of them felt that 5 would have probably been enough. So that's good. So that's one efficiency that you see there. Obviously, this fire department discussion. Now you've just got one budget that you're dealing with there. The annexation thing is one there. This obvious planning discussion is I think key, right? Like I don't I think if you talk to any good mayor, any good town manager, any good municipal official, they will tell you that planning their community is key to their growth. And being able to say that I want to grow, whether it's in Yorktown's case, we understood that growth was always going to head towards interstate. So how do we want to run our water and sewer lines? Where do we want that growth to look like for commercial growth or for industrial growth? Was a key part of it. And how can we deal with that was a good part of it. So I thought that was good. Understanding some of those, and that's not to say that we did it perfectly. I think there's some downfalls, and I think that's probably your next question, right? Like what's some of the things?
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, go there.
That we could have done better, or that are not there. And I would say the county, and because it's an essence, in the essence that not a lot of people have done, the county doesn't understand it all the time. So you get into some discussions with how the annexation is supposed to work with the county. So you have that discussion more often than not is problematic. Farmers outside. I shouldn't say farmers. People outside the rural area, or in the rural area. People outside, not farmers. People outside in the rural area oftentimes want the same zoning strictness. They'll live in an agricultural area and expect that they're going to get the same code enforcement that you would get inside of an urban area. And so you and I both live in a subdivision. We expect our lawns to be, everybody's lawn to be manicured at a 6-inch or 3-inch or 4-inch level. And somebody will be like, well, yeah, but they're not mowing their lawn. And I'd be like, yeah, but you live out in the county, and that's kind of an expectation. So I think there is some establishment of how people expect to live where they live. So understanding some of that. I think we heard the other day from Chase, and this is something Chase, now my successor as town manager, something that he is dealing with, and something I didn't realize. The annexed area in Muncie, they were still eligible for poor relief because it was Old Mount Pleasant Township, and they were not paying taxes. And I think that's just something that they need to work with the state. So I think there's, again, this is not a lot of people have done it. I think you still need to work with some of the state Department of Local Government Finance, the State Board of Accounts. I think you need to work through some of those processes. But that's government, right? Like change is change, and you always have to continue to work it and go through from there.
Hey, thanks for listening today. Thanks for clicking on this and diving in a little bit deeper. We hope you learned something today. And if you did, or you want more information, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to connect you with the right people to get you the answers that you need. But really hope you leave with one thing in mind, is that our goal here at Veritas is to renew communities through great projects and great people. I think all of these conversations have shown that in some way or another. So thanks for listening today, and catch up with us next time.